Hello and welcome to the Career Success Podcast. I'm Jason Connolly. If you're a regular listener, it's great to have you back, but if you're new, welcome to the show. In this series every week, we speak to the biggest names in business all across the globe. We talk about their career stories, the lessons learned, how they've overcome challenges, and what success habits they practice. Practical advice to help you in your career. If you have a passion for business, then this is the podcast for you. In this episode, I'm delighted to be joined by Victoria Humphries from Bath. Victoria is a polar adventurer, 3 times Guinness World Record holder, mountain climber, marathon runner, author and businesswoman. She prides herself on just being your average woman who happens to believe that anything is possible if you put your mind to it. Victoria, along with her mother, are best-selling authors of Frigid Women, which has sold thousands of copies all across the world. The book tells the story of their part of the record-breaking North Pole expedition and received rave reviews when it was first published. The foreword is by Dawn French. Teachit are one of the leading providers of listen plans for teachers in the UK. During her time at Teachit, Victoria has led it through 2 acquisitions, 2 restructures, and the rapid pivoting of the business model as a result of COVID-19. Victoria is also a popular motivational speaker for businesses. She is unusual in the fact that she combines stories from her adventures and challenges with her extensive commercial experience to create a talk that is both inspirational and relatable to the challenges of the modern day workplace. Victoria is also known for avoiding corporate jargon. Victoria is also known for avoiding corporate jargon and simply uses her real life experiences to inspire and motivate. What an introduction, Victoria. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode.
Gosh, yes. Well, in my 20s, I think my father probably summed it up very nicely when he said my CV looked like a dog's dinner. I say that I was just exploring different opportunities, and being serious for a second, I genuinely believe that unless you have a very clear vocation, it's very rare that you actually know what you want to do in your 20s. And I think it's much more important to focus on the skills that you've got inherently and the skills that you develop, and not worry too much about the sector or the job title, because at some point you will naturally fall into something, and at that point you'll then be on your way. It took me until my mid-30s, so I worked, gosh, when I left university I did the M&S graduate training scheme, which I loved, but I'm not entirely sure I was particularly well suited to it. I then went into recruitment for a bit. I did secretarial temp recruitment up in London and loved that. I left that to do my North Pole expedition, and I then kind of saw the light, so to speak, and decided I wanted to be a primary school teacher for a bit. And while doing that, I ran my own business as well, doing kind of personal development work and some team building activities. And so hence my father's description of the dog's dinner. And then eventually in my 30s, I stopped for a bit when I had a child. When I came back to work after about 18 months, when he was about 18 months old, I stumbled into the role at Teachit, which was my absolute dream job, and hence I stayed there for 14 years. So it's a real variety, but the skills being used were the common thread, very definitely.
I can relate to having a varied CV. I think I spent my 20s trying to work out what to do. I was a magician, I was cabin crew, I was a police officer.
Wow.
I did lots of different jobs, and then I kind of fell into recruitment and found it so difficult that it's kept me amused. Well, I wouldn't even say amused, that's the wrong word. It's kept me motivated, I think, because
On
it's
your
difficult.
toes.
On my
Yes.
toes, that's the right thing to say. That's definitely. So what do you enjoy so much about Teachit? What's made you stay there for so long? Because it sounds like you were very similar to me before going there, in whereby you were kind of trying out lots of different things.
Yeah, it was what I discovered was what I really am, a very operational person, and also a people. I'm a generalist, which at times, if I'm honest, has led to kind of self-doubt, because I'm not an expert in marketing or an expert in finance or an expert in sales, but I've come to grow in confidence that actually being a generalist, and probably a very operationally focused generalist, is actually an incredibly valuable skill to have. And
Mm.
so I learned that about myself, and the role very much played to that. But more importantly, along the way, I realized that for me, the values of the company and the purpose of what the company was doing were vitally important. So I mean, I'm sure if I was offered £1 million, I might be prepared to be a bit more flexible on my beliefs. But
I don't think
the
that would be the
purpose
case,
is
Victoria. You
important.
sound like you're quite true to what you believe in. You say you're a generalist, and you kind of say that, and it almost sounds like you're kind of putting that down, but that's almost a bad thing. But I believe, and tell me if you agree with this, but I tend to think entrepreneurs. That's exactly what an entrepreneur is. They're able to turn their hand to a lot of different things. And, when you start up a business, my accountant once said to me, and I said, oh, why can't I find someone to do this and do this and do this? And she said to me, Jason, you have to understand that you're just one of these people that can do, everything. And you take that for granted. But a lot of people don't have that. They have to train in one thing. So I think that though generalist traits are the traits of an entrepreneur.
I think definitely the one thing, and I think being a generalist is incredibly valuable. And actually now I've come out the other end of Teachit, I've realized how valuable those generalist skills are, even more so, moving into the non-exec director role, where you need to be able to understand a wide range of skills. With certain roles where you need to be the accountant or the expert in something. But a lot of the time, if you can bring that really broad perspective, it's incredibly valuable. I do have to say, though, that the person who set up and created, or the couple who created Teachit, they had the original vision and that unbelievably entrepreneurial drive. Where I'm brilliant is implementing it and making it happen on the ground. And that's something I've loved, absolutely loved. Sometimes getting my hands a bit too dirty. And as I've moved up the career ladder, I've had to realize I've got to step back a bit. But it's definitely, I think it's a really valuable, I'm really pleased I've got the generalist skill set, because it is very easy to apply in so many areas. And I love the people bit. That's really important to me as well, looking after staff.
I suppose having these generalist skills as well also gives you a perspective from every side of the fence, because you've
Yes.
ultimately got your hands dirty, in those, every different part of the business.
Completely. And when I first started at Teachit, there were 6 of us, I think, 7 of us.
Mm.
When I left, there were 30. So pretty much all areas, not quite all, but probably 2/3 of the areas I had spent time or dabbled in. There was very little I didn't know enough, to understand what was happening, which is actually really useful, because it enables you to trust more easily. Because someone said to me once, when you're leading a business, you need to hire the experts. You need to have people chomping at your heels, and you need to hire the experts, and then trust them. And it was completely true. My senior team, they were all experts in their respective fields, and there was no way I knew more than them. And therefore it was easily to inherently trust them. You could question, but you trusted them, definitely.
I suppose you don't need to know everything, but you
No.
having, because you just said yourself, but you're a people's person. But I'm guessing those, what makes you a great people's person is being able to understand and relate, and those are the qualities of a good leader.
Yes, I do think it's really important. Well, for me, my leadership style, and everyone's different,
Mm,
is definitely to be annoying at times, obviously, and question, and sometimes probably
mm,
question in a way that is maybe not appropriate, but you just need to be comfortable with the facts. But once you're comfortable that team is heading off in the right direction, or they're exploring something, or they're innovating, or they're trying something new, why get in their way? Why check up on them? If you've got a good enough team, they'll come to you with a problem, or they'll come to you with a question.
mm. I sometimes think if I'm getting the urge to want to check up on someone, maybe it's because they're not doing the job right.
Well, that there is an element of that, but I think,
Yeah.
and that's something I really missed actually in the last 6 months when we were all working from home, because I'm a ears and eyes person, and
Me too.
I, I was always told when I was younger I was nosy, but I now consider that a positive. I think it's
Uh,
really important just to
mm,
watch and learn and listen, and you pick up the vibes. You know who's doing well, not doing well. You can just read the situation so much more easily, and then
mm.
to step back or interfere.
Oh, I agree with that. I completely agree with what you've said. Um, Really interesting. So let's talk about your kind of strap line, which I absolutely love. Anything is possible.
God, yes.
Not to put you on the spot or anything,
Well,
but I
actually,
love it. How
well,
did
I've
you
got to
get to this
tell you.
place where you believe anything is possible?
Well, I'm gutted. I'm absolutely gutted. Yesterday, I've discovered there is
Right.
something that I can't apply that to. So they've just announced the new astronaut recruitment selection process, and I'm desperate to go to space, absolutely desperate. So I went online to the European Space Agency and had a look over the weekend to see, could I, anything is possible. I was fine just by months with the age. I know I've got the right
Okay.
attitude. I could learn the language and all the rest of it. They needed a master's or a PhD in science, and there's no way that is possible for me to do in the next few months. So, anything is possible 99% of the time.
I
There are
absolutely love that. But you
exceptions.
even went online to
Oh,
actually
yes.
look.
Oh,
Anything
yes.
is possible apart from this one thing right now.
Yes.
How did you come? Because yes, it's a great bold statement, and yes, it sounds fantastic. But that's a mindset thing. That's something that you've got to that place in your life. What kind of tell us a bit about this strapline and this journey that you've been on? Because it's a fantastic journey, and I guess within that we can talk about your Guinness World Record holder, the mountain climber, the marathon runner. It just goes on and on. But yeah, tell us a bit about this story because it's fascinating.
Yeah, and I think, I joked then about the, European Space Agency, and there are times when anything isn't always possible, but
Mm.
it is a mindset, and it doesn't need to be space, Everest, North Pole. So I suppose I was always brought up as a child. Why not? Well, why can't you? Give it a go. So what if you fall over? Climb the tree. Well, okay, you've got to get down on your own. If you fall out, you'll learn. And not in a cruel way, but it genuinely was innate self belief. We were taught that why not try, And so we were always given these challenges. My grandfather notoriously would give us challenges in the summer, probably because we were bored and being annoying. But it was always like, well, if you fall in the river, does it really matter? You'll just get a bit wet. So I suppose that, without me realizing, had a massive influence on me and my brothers. I mean, they've both gone on and done incredibly adventurous things as well. So when I was in my mid-20s, I saw an advert in the newspaper, and it literally said women wanted to walk to the North Pole. And I knew I could do it, not in an arrogant way. I don't mean that, but I knew, well, why not? Why?
Who was advertising this?
It's not your normal advert.
No, it's
Um,
not, though.
it's
Pizza delivery drivers, perhaps, not Trek to the
exactly
North Poles.
exactly next door to it. Yeah, no, there was a lady called Caroline Hamilton who was desperate to go to the North Pole, and she hooked up with a adventurer called Pen Hadow who had done various Arctic trips.
Mm.
And they decided the best way of doing it was to have a female relay expedition, because
Mm.
the original aim had been for a small group of women to do the whole thing, but sponsorship in those days for women to do adventurous activities like that was very hard to get, because a lot of companies didn't believe women were capable of doing it. Sounds weird. It's only 20 odd years ago. But
Now it would be probably a PR absolutely success.
absolutely. I mean,
Mm.
now the whole world is very different, but it was a very different place
Yeah.
those a few years ago. So yeah, I applied, and then practicing what she preached. My mother said, "Well, why don't I apply too?" So she also applied. So both of us went through the various selection weekends, and what they were really looking for was that mindset. Anyone can get fit, and you don't actually. Of course, you have to be very fit, but you're not covering 20, 30, 40 miles every day. You're covering 10 if you're lucky. It's all about
Mm.
that plodding, that perseverance, the ability in the Arctic. No, there is no map. Nothing is ever the same. You can't take a bearing on, I don't know, if you're in England, take a bearing on a tree and walk towards it, because the Arctic is just made up of ice flows. So that tree, if it existed, which it wouldn't in the Arctic,
Mm.
but that lump of ice would be moving. So everything moves the whole time. You could be walking along and the ice opens up under you.
Wow.
So you've
And that
got,
happened to you, didn't it?
it did,
I
yeah,
read in the notes that the ice
yeah.
opened up underneath you and your mother, and you found yourself swimming in the
Yeah.
Arctic Ocean.
Yes, which is quite literally a life or death situation. And we were in there for some time. We were unable to get out in the immediate
Wow.
instant of the accident. So at the time, you can't go into, oh, woe is me, and feel sorry for yourself. You have to go into survival
You must have
instinct.
had all that gear on as well, so to get
Well,
out of that.
yes, you have your skis on your feet, your boots, your sledges attached to you.
Wow.
So we kicked off our boots and our skis, we let go of our sledges, and then focused on getting us, the humans, to one
Yeah.
side. But of course, then you have no spare kit. So you only have one set
Oh,
of kit, because everything is all about weight, minimal weight.
yeah.
So we had to roll in the snow to try and absorb as much water, and then you just have to go
Oh,
into
wow.
survival mode. Again, you can't stop and wait for a bus to come and pick you up. You are
No,
hours and
no.
hours and hours and hours and hours away, and no one's going to come and get you. You've got to have that mindset
Yeah.
to be able to cope with the unexpected, cope with whatever's been thrown
Mm.
at you.
I can relate to you because this is hardly the same. But I went to Finland
Oh,
and with me and
wonderful.
my mum a couple of Christmases ago, and we went out on one of these snow plows,
Oh,
and
yes.
we thought it was kind of a group exercise, and we got there, and the guy just said, "No, no, 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 no. What you've got on is totally wrong." And we had quite a fair few layers, and he said, "No, you need to put this sheepskin thing on here." Me and my mum were thinking, this seems a bit overkill. But anyway, we got on and we said, "Oh, where's the group?" And he said, "No, it's just us."
Oh,
So we
my
were going on
goodness.
this snow plow, and we were just going and going and going and going more into the wilderness. Just
Oh,
remember, he
amazing.
said to me, "We'll stop in the middle for some like you know what they drink. I can't remember what it's called now, like Glühwein." And we said to him, "Can we stop now for the break?" And we was expecting a hut, and he just pulled over and said, "Oh, this is the break." And I looked at my mum, and it was -22, and her
Yes.
eyelids had
Yes,
there was
yes.
icicles on them. She could barely open. And we was obviously we'd only been out for about 40 minutes on this thing, so I can't imagine what it's like to be in the North Pole. Because when we got back after that, we had to say to him after an hour and a half, he said, "We're going to do another 20 kilometers." And I had to say, "Listen, my mum's not in a good way on the
She's
back
going
of
to be
this thing.
frozen. Yeah.
Yeah, she's really not in a great way. Her bottle of water next to her body has now gone to solid
Frozen.
ice." So,
Yes.
and then we spent the night in the ice hotel. But anyway, I'm massively digressing.
Amazing.
And we couldn't hack it. It was -18, and it was so cold.
But
And every two
sitting on
minutes,
those machines we remember
oh
we were pulling a
yeah,
sledge, so we were getting hot. Whereas I have sat on one of those snow machines and flip a neck, it's freezing.
it's
So yeah, I
freezing, it's
completely relate.
bumpy. I kind of just
Yes.
imagined a nice, when you kind of see them, you kind of
It's
just
not
think
like
it's
that.
yeah, it's not like that. You're constantly going up and down. My mum was holding on for dear life to me.
It's not flat, it's not smooth. Definitely not. No.
Sorry, I've gone completely off with my holiday
No,
story now, but
it's
it
brilliant.
really brought it back to me. So, how long did the expedition take?
So we were our leg of the expedition. We were
Ah,
training on the ice for 3 weeks, and we were on the ice for about 3.5 weeks. So
it's a
just
long
under
time.
just over 6 weeks in total.
Wow.
So the whole expedition itself took about 3 months, and the final leg got there. The final team got there at the end of May, which
Did
now
anyone not make it in the group?
no, no, we all made it. There were
Oh wow.
a few dramas along the way, but yes, everyone, each group did manage to make it. But it was tough at times, very definitely. But it taught me a lot. You don't
What did
realize
it
at the
teach you?
time. Well, at the time, you just carry on as you are. But it's when you get back into the real life, and especially in business, absolutely no question in business, it's taught me perspective. It's given me a perspective on life. So pre-COVID, before we've all been tested to the absolute limits, but in the normal world pre-COVID, I would have said things like, if the train is late or the bus is late and you're late for a meeting, rather than get hyper stressed or worried about it, I'm like, well, you just tell them that you're late. That's the situation. The world's not going to come to an end, kind of thing. Now in the last year, it's been a lot
Mm,
harder. No question.
yeah.
All of us have been tested, and I've had days when I, like everyone, feel sorry for myself and think it's all unhorrible and all the rest of it. But generally speaking, I've got the tools to get myself through those difficult periods. You don't always remember to use those tools, but I think what it's given me is that bank of resilience, that bank of, in this situation, I did it, and that's what I did, and I came out. And so you can repeat it. And life isn't a constant. Life is constantly full of changes. So I'm relatively chilled about change or the unexpected. It doesn't phase me too much. You have that immediate, oh my goodness, this is unfair, or this is difficult, or this is horrible, but I can bounce very quickly. I think that's what it's given me, is that speed
Really
of picking
interesting.
myself back up.
Really interesting. And you wrote a book.
Yes.
Tell us about the book because that's even so interesting in itself. It's cool. The title is just
Well,
even
I know.
making me want to know more. It's called Frigid Woman.
Yes, well, my godfather, who's a vicar, actually, he said, look, you need to have racy titles nowadays to sell books. And
He's got a point. He's
he does
probably a
have a
PR
point.
genius in the
Well,
waiting.
exactly, I know. And trekking to the Arctic, to the North Pole, isn't really particularly racy. So he said, call it Frigid Women. So that's what we did. And a few people it puts off, but maybe it attracts more. I don't know. But the vast majority of people, like it. It's not. I'm not. It's not going to win any Nobel prizes, but it's actually sold remarkably well. And it's something I never thought I would have written a book. It was never something that crossed my mind that I'd be able to do that. And it wasn't ghost written. Everyone always says, was it ghost written? No, Mum and I wrote it. I wrote it while sitting in lectures for my PGCE, education degree I was doing when I came back from the Arctic. So I would sit in the boring lectures and type away on my book on the back seat of the lecture hall. But yeah, it's something I'm very proud of.
Was it published in 2010?
No, it was published. Second or third edition was published. The third edition was 2010. The first edition was 98 or 99. Yes.
Ah, okay. Because did you write it with a different name at the time?
Oh, my maiden name is Riches,
Oh,
so Sue and Victoria
oh,
Riches.
okay. Because I've got the book in front of me now, and
Oh
it
my
it just
goodness.
looks, yeah, it just looks so interesting.
Yes. It's
Someone,
written in diary format, so it's got mum's perspective and then my perspective, which works quite well because I'm saying I'm having a good day and she says she's had a bad day, and I think that bit was hard, and she's like, "Oh, come on, it was put yourself together, it was easy."
I just love it. It makes me want to read it. In 1997, a group of 20 women set out to become the world's first all-female expedition to the North Pole, and it just sounds like a great tale. And even the foreword was by Dawn
I
French,
know.
which is absolutely fabulous. How did that all kind of come about?
Someone, like all these things, someone knew her agent or knew some connection, and she was absolutely brilliant. She was like, "Of course, I will, write the forward." But she was the patron of the expedition, and she said that her job
Oh,
was to look after all the menfolk when they were left behind. So, of course, all the menfolk were thinking that was great. Yes, please. But she was brilliant, and she came the final leg, final team. She actually went to Heathrow to meet them when they got back. I mean, she didn't just put a name to it. She actually supported us properly. So I've
that's
got
lovely to
massive
hear.
respect for her.
Yeah, fantastic, and I think sounds like an absolutely great tale, and it's one that's on my bookshelf for me to read. So tell us a bit about kind of what you're doing current day, and how what you've done, kind of with your expedition and all these different things you've learned, how that's kind of allowed you to do what you're doing now.
So yeah, for the last 20 years, I've been doing a lot of public speaking, a lot of motivational speaking to schools and businesses.
Mm.
But it's always been in conjunction with the day job. And at the end of 2020, I left Teachit, and I was like, now is the chance to actually, pursue the career and the purpose, the other purpose that I want to do. So the purpose when I was at Teachit was supporting teachers and supporting the students who they were teaching. But now I want to do what I want to do, and I have a really, really passionate belief that we need to equip both our workplace staff and our students for the real world. And by that I mean we educate everyone. We seem to educate everyone to believe that the world's a very linear world. So you go to school, you come out the other end, you go to university or college, you then go to jobs, and you eventually at some point retire. You have a few years when you have your pension, and then you die. That's not life. And therefore, when things go wrong, people aren't prepared for it. So what I love doing, absolutely passionately love doing, is working with businesses, especially, and helping by using my North Pole expedition and all my other adventures and all the lessons I've learned, help them realize that normal people can achieve things. Normal people, I like an electric blanket. I'm not an adventurer. I'm not a hardcore explorer. I like my home comforts. I can assure you, my glass of wine. I don't like camping in the cold.
I think
So
I fall into that category as well. When you were
yes,
talking, I was thinking that's so courageous. I would love to do that. But I lasted an hour and a half on a snowplow. And I lasted half a night in the ice hotel before having to get a taxi 18 kilometres to warmth. So I think it's such such a great thing that you've done. But I'm sitting here myself thinking it sounds great in principle. But
It
yeah.
doesn't have to be that, you see. So my
Mm,
theory is, supposing, I don't know, I'm making this up, supposing you didn't know how to bicycle, um, and as an adult, you think, oh, well, that's just too embarrassing, or it's too big a thing to achieve, or I'll never do it. So you don't do it, and then you put it off, and you put it off, and you put it off, and you put it off. Whereas actually, if you put things, first of all, what's the worst that can happen? Well, you'll fall off. No one's really going to laugh at you. Actually, people will probably respect you for giving something a go.
mhm,
Um, so, as knowing and realizing that there will be lumps and bumps along the way, you will, I don't like to say fail, I prefer to say fall over. You will fall over. Equally, don't think, right, my challenge is I've got to ride a bike from London to Brighton. My challenge is I've got to bicycle from one end of the street to the other end of the street. Give yourself bite-sized chunks. If you set out to climb Everest, go to space, go to the North Pole, you never get there. When I run marathons,
mm.
and I hate running. I mean, I loathe running, but I do it because of the feeling I get at the other end. But when I set out, I don't think I'm going to run 26 miles. I think, let's just run 6 miles. That's quite easy. Then I can run another six. Okay, I'll do another six. And you only have to do four
Hmm.
sixes, and you've basically done it.
It's kind of weird you say that because that's the way my mind works. When I'm doing stuff, I don't look at the overall thing that I need to do because it can be overwhelming. And what I
Exactly.
tend to do is break things into chunks. And
And also it
it's, yeah.
changes. If you're too with a strategy, if you put it into business, if you put a strategy and say, this is our document, we are going to follow this, and the whole company gets on board, and you do all the comms and all that stuff and all the graphics that go everywhere, the moment, one step down the road, something changes, whether it's as drastic as COVID, or whether it's somebody, the government in our case used to issue a different education directive or something, then everyone thinks, oh my goodness, we've failed. The strategy's gone to pot. It's not going to work now. And what do we do? No, all you need to do is just go left a bit or right a bit, and you'll still end up at your end goal. But actually, your end goal may be a different end goal. And that's
Hmm.
okay. Shackleton, he set out to get to the South Pole. And actually, his end goal ended up being, let's get the whole team home safely and forget the South Pole. He still succeeded.
Really interesting. I think you make some really valid points there, which can be applied in business for anyone. And it's. I think just to kind of talk about this as well. It is a tough time for a lot of people at the moment.
Mm.
We are. I
Hmm.
do honestly believe we're coming to the end of this thing now, and hopefully there's real light at the end of the tunnel. But we get a lot of people who listen to this show all over the world, who are young people who are maybe just starting out. They've maybe thought about university, or maybe university isn't for them. I never went to university, but what advice would you give to people who, using your mantra, anything is possible, which I love, I love. What would you say to people maybe kind of starting out, trying to find their feet in the world, maybe thinking about I might want to start my own business one day. What's your kind of advice to people in general? And I think it'll be really helpful to people, especially with the time we're in at the moment.
Um, I think it's about being open minded. So, your goal, for example, let's say you've just come out of school, you don't want to go to university. Your goal, don't set your goal that I want to be a marketing director. Set your
Mm,
goal, I want to learn as many skills as possible, and I think I might be able to become a marketing director in the end. If you're too blinkered, you might close off opportunities. So if someone offers you a job, as long as the environment is an environment that sits comfortably with you, um, and whether, as I said earlier, my values are really important to me. So whatever it is that are your non-negotiables, as long as those bits are being ticked, be open-minded, because you never know where that journey is going to take you. So if you're driving from, I don't know, in my case, Bath to London, the M4 may be shut, the motorway may be shut halfway. You'll still get to London, but you may go via a diversion. So don't be
mm.
blinkered, I would say. Give things a go, because you never know what they're going to offer you in the long term.
I think that's great advice. I think a lot of people go through life with tunnel vision,
Hmm.
and I always find it amazing, kind of working in recruitment as well. The amount of time opportunity can knock at someone's door, but
Yes.
they don't. They're not ready for it, or they're not open minded enough to receive it. And you
Say
should take
yes.
every say
Say
yes,
yes.
listen to
Always say
people and the
yes.
opportunity. And I think that's what I've been great at in my life, but I think I've got better at it the older I've got. It is being open-minded, and that actually sometimes being present, being in that present moment, and listening to what people tell you. So I realised a very valuable lesson at the kind of my mid-20s when I was in the police. It was yes, okay, talking is great, but listening actually
Yes.
allows you to get a lot further forward in probably most situations.
And also, don't be afraid to say, actually, do you know, I'm not sure that's right. So I remember when I finished my teaching degree, did some supply teaching to begin with, and then I was offered a permanent job, which I hadn't applied for. It was a school I was just enjoying working in. And I said yes. And, I felt excited for a few days. And I remember that Christmas, I felt sick because I just knew in my stomach that it wasn't the right thing to do. Not because it was a
Mm,
nasty school, it just wasn't right for me. And my parents said to me, well, say no, thank you. You don't, it's not
mm.
pulling out in a bad way, it's being polite and nice. And yes, you will cause them problems. Better to do it and be brave and say no, thank you than to,
Yeah.
you're not a failure because you've said no thank you or you've pulled out of something. You're not a failure. You're listening. As long as you've done the proper research and you're listening to the right instincts, then
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's worth saying to anybody who might be listening to this now, who maybe think, oh, I haven't done what I wanted to do at my GCSEs, I haven't done great in my A levels, or whatever it might be. It's worth pointing out you failed your A levels. I failed. I didn't even do A levels. I didn't do very well in my GCSEs. I went to an awful comprehensive in the worst 5 comprehensive schools in the country. But it doesn't
no, it
matter.
doesn't.
It
It's
can
what
seem
you
the
do
end of the
with it
world.
after. It's how you pick yourself up is what counts.
I think for me as well, when it was people saying to me, "Well, you haven't got qualifications," and I got this fire in my belly so much, I thought,
Yes.
people keep telling me I'm not going to be successful because I haven't got this particular piece of paper, qualification, or whatever, however you want to phrase it. And that for me was my spurring on factor that made me think, right, I'm going to go out there and show you all that you're wrong.
Well, do you know, and
Mm.
in a bizarre way, it's the best thing that happened to me. I learned so many lessons from that, and yeah, and I learned, feel sorry for yourself for a bit, and then pick yourself up again. It's about how quickly do you pick yourself up, and don't look back. So yes, I look back and I learn from it. So the biggest lesson was take advice, because everyone was telling me not to do the subjects I did, but I wanted to because I was, you know, bloody minded, I suppose. But I didn't look back, I looked forward. And I think that is the really important thing, because otherwise, you could beat yourself up. These things happen in life.
And
You're
I so agree. I think that's such a beautiful way to end the show. Look forward, keep an open mind. Anything is possible. You look forward, and I think there's so many lessons in this 35 minutes that people can take away with them. So thank you so much, Victoria. If people want to find out more about you or about the book, where can they go to?
the best place is to go to my website, which is anythingispossible.co.uk, and all the other links are there too.
What a great domain name to have as well.
I know,
Anythingispossible.co.uk. Make sure you renew that subscription. That'll be gone
absolutely.
quick. Up on the ball there. But listen, thank you so much for coming on this show.
It's been brilliant. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
And that was Victoria Humphries from Bath. Her book, Frigid Women, you can buy it on Amazon. I'm Jason Connolly. This is the Career Success Podcast. Until next